to your favourite teacher. Today we'll be exploring how Frankenstein is structured as an epistolary. Fancy word. This basically is a story in the form of letters and a frame narrative, a story within a story. In the summer of 1816, Mary Shelley and her then husband Percy Shelley were living on Lake Geneva in the Swiss Alps, near their friend and fellow poet Lord Byron. You might have heard of him. Amidst the constant fall of rain, Shelley and her friends took to reading ghost stories to one another, when Byron proposed that they each try to write one. For days, Shelley struggled to think of an idea which would make her story unique, until when listening to Percy and Lord Byron discussing the theory of galvanism, the idea that electricity could be used to create life. Shelley's idea for the story, Frankenstein, began to grow. However, when the work was complete, Percy still had one more major contribution to the novel to make. He suggested that Mary add Walton's epistolary narrative to frame Victor Frankenstein's story. This small addition of 4 letters in the novel's beginning, as well as those which follow Frankenstein's story, help add a new and deeper level of meaning to the frightening Gothic story of Frankenstein's own discoveries. Notably, the novel opens with an epistolary narrative, a story told through a series of letters. Walton begins the novel by writing to his sister, Margaret, with details of his journey through the north. Among many other purposes, the letters from Walton establish a strong connection between the novel's more fantastical events and the everyday, common characters, emotions, and moral issues covered within the story. The matter-of-fact nature of these letters comes from their use of dates, realistic accounts of Walton's itinerary, and their attention to factual and geographical details, such as the people Walton journeys with, the places he sees. Furthermore, this connection to the real world is vital to the novel's Gothic nature, as the realism of the characters and their emotional lives juxtapose the fantastical nature of the monster, as well as the novel's later settings and events. For example, the creature's confrontation with Frankenstein in the Alps, Frankenstein's seclusion in the Orkneys, and later their chase through the frozen tundra of the north. Interestingly, it is the same chase between Frankenstein and his creature which brings the relative realism of Walton's letters to his sister Margaret. Thus, Shelley uses the letters not only to juxtapose the Gothic and romantic nature of later settings and events in the novel, but also as a way of establishing a sense of realism to break later. Once this realistic exposition is established, Shelley aims to shock and intrigue readers when the gigantic stature of the monster is seen, drawn along on sled through the Arctic tundra. This becomes the first sighting within Shelley's ghost story, the first glimpse at the mystery of the novel to follow, all established by Walton's epistolary narrative. The novel's mystery only deepens when a second man is drawn aboard, one who speaks in riddles at first about a demon of some sort, states that he is in the Arctic to seek one who's fled from me, and has lost everything and cannot begin a life anew. This sudden change from realism to Gothic mystery helps make it clear that Shelley wants this character to bring aboard Walton's ship a level of mystery, added to by the fact that he is referred to only as the stranger for quite some time. By the end of Walton's letters, Shelley descends the novel into an even deeper mystery. The promise of a strange tale of tragedy and ruin. Walton's ship encased in the thick ice of the northern seas, and the glimpse of the strange, gigantic figure in the distance all set the stage for the further mysteries to come. Once Walton's story is complete, readers hear Frankenstein's story through the ears of Walton himself. Here, Shelley uses what is called a frame narrative, a story or narrative told within another narrative. In a frame narrative, the outer story wraps around the second as a way of introduction and subsequent conclusion. Not only does the frame narrative serve to introduce Frankenstein's narrative, frame narratives are also used to unite or connect ideas between both stories, give explanation or context for the story within the frame, create unity between the two stories, and much more. As we've said, the frame of Walton's letters helps introduce a sense of mystery throughout the character of the stranger on board. More than this though, Shelley uses the frame narrative in order to add new meaning to the tale which Frankenstein tells. Like Frankenstein, Walton is a character intrigued by the promise of new discoveries and science. Both characters are interested in the secrets of magnetism, and Frankenstein's exploration of the limits of natural philosophy mirrors the exploration of Walton through the limits of the world, symbolised by his journey through the North. When Walton writes to his sister saying he longs for the company of a friend, the stranger, Frankenstein, becomes the answer to that longing. Another interesting similarity between the two characters is their experiences with danger. Walton's very first letter opens by assuring his sister nothing will come of the foreboding with which she regarded the prospect of his expedition. Ironically, only 2 letters later, Walton is found trapped in the Arctic ice with no guarantee of freedom or salvation. When Frankenstein comes aboard in a state of decay, Shelley can be seen to be foreshadowing a similar demise for Walton, who has already found himself in unexpected danger. Both men being interested in the prospects of new sciences, a pursuit which Frankenstein tells Walton is madness they share, Shelley has introduced the character of Frankenstein at the same moment in which Walton finds himself trapped, to allow readers to make the connection between the scientific ventures which have brought them to this point. The fact that Walton is so close to danger, and Frankenstein himself has already gone through a tragic fall of a kind, shows how Shelley aligns the promises of science with a danger which leads to the fall of men. Frankenstein's tale, therefore, is framed as a clear warning not only to Walton, but to the scientifically minded for whom he serves as a symbol. By the end of the novel, it seems Walton has not properly heeded the warning of Frankenstein's tale, asking for the details about how he made the creature. Frankenstein, though, learning from his suffering, refuses, dying in the effort it took to tell the tale, another event in the novel which Shelley uses as a symbol for the effects of science on mankind. Walton's frame, though, is not the only one which exists within the novel. Later on, in the snow of the Alps, the creature narrates to Frankenstein a story of his own death, a tale of how he came to life abandoned, how he struggled to survive, to learn language, and how he found his true nature. Although where Walton admires Frankenstein and is intrigued by his story, the same cannot be said for Frankenstein towards his creature. Never do we see the same amount of respect afforded for the creature from Frankenstein as we see from Walter towards Frankenstein. Whilst he agrees to make the creature a wife, this act is not out of kindness, but rather the need to keep the rest of his family alive. Frankenstein's attention to the creature's story serves as a way of showing a clear juxtaposition between Walton and Frankenstein's character. The latter is selfish and emotionless, not caring for the creature, whereas Walton, the more admirable, sympathetic narrator of the novel, shows affection and care for the man he finds. Perhaps Shelley ends the novel with Frankenstein's death then as a piece of poetic justice and a final warning to Walton to give up his own scientific endeavours. That was a lot to get your head around. So try some of the activities and see how you get on. I'm Miss Meeks, thanks for watching.